If you want to stay up to date with all current hip hop events and releases, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications to become part of this community. What's up, guys? So today we got another tier list, and this time around we'll be ranking all the Eminem albums that have dropped over his career so far. As you can see, we have the usual tier list right here, going from D all the way up to S, S being the best and D being the worst, of course. And we're just gonna, go through the albums that are listed down here and see how I would rank them. This is, of course, personal opinion, but I always kind of mix it in with how important they were in M's career and how they have influenced hip hop in a way. So that's also gonna play a role. I usually always start with like picking the best one that I would say goes in the tier S, and then the worst one, and then kind of figuring out how others relate to it. But in this case, I'm really not sure how, what I would rank the best Eminem album. Of course, I could go ahead and rank, for example, the Marshall Mathers LP, probably his most, his arguably, objectively, his best work together with the Eminem Show. That was just a great era, 2000 to 2002 for Eminem. I could rank them as the best ones, but personally, I also like some other Eminem records more. But I think I would put, actually, the way, I'm not sure. Maybe Marshall Mathers LP is S tier though. Like that could very well be in the S tier just because it's such a legendary record too. Now looking at the other records, I'm a younger dude, so I grew up listening to, what people call new Eminem. So starting from like Recovery, I listened to the Marshall Mathers LP2 heavy. Like this is probably when it dropped, and then the years following that, that was the record I was listening to. So that's like, that album will always hold a special place in my heart, and that's why, I can't, other people will put it maybe at the C or B, but to me it is such a great record that this is probably one of my favorite Eminem records, and it probably goes in the A category. Stuff on here like Bad Guy, that's one of my favorite Eminem songs, and I know a lot of people probably, they wouldn't understand that in the way because, for long-time Eminem fans, that's just not something they would consider, but Bad Guy to me is such an amazing song. I also thought on this album he displayed a bit more willingness to experiment and try different styles, and that's why I also like it very much. So I think I'm going to put that in the A tier. I think I'm going to also leave the Eminem Show in the A tier and have the Marshall Mathers LP in the S tier. Now, of course, you could argue where the Slim Shady LP would go. It could probably go in the S tier too. I also like how this album, while still sticking to, of course, Eminem roots, did display, like, each song had its own character. And of course, that was Eminem's first big album after, dropping the Infinite CD, which kind of flopped, but which I still love the title track from Infinite. That vibe is so nostalgic in a way. I can just imagine, when did this drop? This dropped like early 90s or something, or mid 90s, or 96 or something. I can imagine how he was recording in Detroit at the time, and what kind of like, even though I wasn't in Detroit at that time, it kind of takes me back through the music. So that's why I really like that title track, and also the rest of the tape is kind of forgettable, but I do love that title track. But this is, of course, not a very important piece in his discography. That's why I'll leave it at the C tier right now. Maybe we can move it around a little bit later on. But all right, let's go through this. Encore, not arguably, but very clearly his worst album. Fans agree and critics agree, so this is the D category for sure. Because that's like the lower end of the spectrum. There are, of course, worse hip-hop albums out there, but just comparing Eminem albums, this is his worst. You could, of course, put the Infinite CD, with Encore as well, but I'm gonna leave it on C just because I love that title track. And because Infinite is also a more important piece in his career, starting him off, and he also mentioned it on later songs. While Encore was just whack. Let me just put it like that, Going from there, all the records that we have down here, Relapse, Recovery, Kamikaze, Music to be Murdered by, and Revival I like, although probably Revival the least of them. While I did like it when it dropped and I was really hyped, I was up all night, waiting for the album to drop. Um, so that it does hold a special place for me. I can see after looking at it, through a different perspective, through a different set of eyes, some years later, that this maybe wasn't his best, or maybe not his best at all. So Revival, I would still put higher than Encore. I think I think people are too harsh on Revival. How people hated on Walk on Water when it first dropped and all that. I didn't think it was too bad. I didn't think Walk on Water was that bad. But people just like to jump on that hate train, that Eminem hate train at the time. And but still, moments, especially the last three tracks. What was it? A Rose, Castle, and whatever. But all of those that kind of tied in together, where he rapped the letters he wrote to his daughter, throughout the years and all that, was very personal. And yeah, people criticize the features on here, the pop features on here, but it wasn't too bad for me. I still enjoy the record to this day. It kind of has like 2, 3, 4 skips maybe on there, but to the rest of the record, I still listen. So that's why it's not as bad. Now, Kamikaze, on the other hand, was a step up from that. I think Kamikaze was not perfect in any means, but it was kind of a comeback for Eminem. Around this time, also the Kill Shot track dropped during the beef with MGK. So it was, Eminem was getting some traction again in hip hop, and yeah, that's why I think this record was definitely a step up from the last record, Revival in this case. And that's why I put it in the B category, because I don't think it's on the level of a Marshall Mathers LP2 or Eminem Show. Now kind of looking at it, the Eminem Show on the same level as MMLP2, it's kind of weird, because the Eminem Show was a really important, probably the peak in his career at that time. 8 Mile dropped around that time. Lose Yourself was a really big hit. So I'm not sure. I'll leave it like this for now, because that's my personal opinion. But I get if you would put the Eminem Show higher up. So that's that. Now then, getting into the other stuff, we have Recovery. His comeback after 4 or 5 years of staying quiet, kind of retrieving from music. Also having to do with the overdose that he went through, or not overdose. He of course didn't pass away, but the almost lethal overdose that he had in 2005, I believe. And this was not new Eminem yet, because new Eminem, that era people always refer to, started with Recovery, but this was kind of like already a new era in a way. So I think I would put Relapse on the same level as Kamikaze, because it did have a lot of duds in the playlist. There's a lot of skips on there, but the lyricism on here, I recently was looking at some rhyme patterns and lyrical breakdowns of some tracks on here, and what Eminem does with words on this LP is just incredible. It just showcases his talents as a songwriter and as a modern poet in a way that you don't see on a lot of other records. So that's why this album is very important too, because it also introduced his presence into the mainstream again. So I'm going to put it in the B category. I'm going to put it there for now. Now, Recovery is an album I hold very dearly, because that is also probably, together with MMLP2, one of the most listened to Eminem albums for me personally. Tracks on here, So Bad, Cinderella Man, Cold Wind Blows, what other tracks do we have on here? Spacebound and stuff like that, On Fire and all that. Those are, to me, those are some of the best Eminem songs, just because I feel like at that time those songs were meant very personally, because he was, as the title says, recovering from, or like trying to figure out what to do with this life now, what all of this is about that he's doing. So I honestly would put this up here. This is a very unpopular opinion, I know. I can probably leave it down here too, but just because it has such a personal meaning for me, I'm gonna put it in the A category. But I get why if people, wouldn't put it there. Now this is kind of tough because what's left is Music to Be Murdered By, which I think is also a very great record. It just showcases Eminem's ability as a rapper. The flows and cadences and lyricism he uses on the project, to me, is some of his best. This is him proving again in when did this drop? Beginning of 2020, I believe. We just had the B-side drop at the end of 2020. This to me is just Eminem trying to prove to people again that he can rap, that he's the rap god. And that's why I believe this is also a very great record. But I don't, I can't put it in the A tier because it hasn't stood the test of time for that. So I think I will put it in the B category. Now, of course, you could argue about this. You could argue if you would maybe view it like this or take this down or the Eminem show up there. But I think this is it. I think I'm going to leave it at this. I think this is the final version of my Eminem tier list that I would want it to look like. Yeah, I think I'm good with that. Now, I want to know what your favorite Eminem albums are and how you would rank them. I'll have the link to the tier list in the description if you want to go create one for yourself or like look how you would fit them into this tier, make your tier list. And yeah, let's have a discussion about Eminem and his discography, his career in the comments. And then I'll see you guys in the next one. Y'all have a good one. If you watched this video to the end and liked it, and you want to stay up to date with all current hip-hop events and releases, make sure to subscribe, turn on notifications, hit that like button, and go follow my social media and blog down in the description. It really helps me out. Until the next one, y'all have an incredible day, and y'all take care.